Once you plant these, you pretty much have them forever because they're just going to multiply and multiply, and you can pluck them apart, harvest all you want. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having an awesome day. It is Friday, July 11th here in South Georgia, and on today's video we're talking about onions. No, it's not yet time to start seeds for bulbing onions down here in the deep south, although it won't be long. But today we're talking about a different type of onion. So today we're talking about perennial onions, and I want to show you something pretty odd that has happened here behind me with a variety that we've been growing for many years, and then I'm going to show you a different variety that we've been testing over the last 1 or 2 years that I really like and we now have available. And for those of you that may be new to this idea of perennial onions, let me explain this a little bit before we get started. So this is not like your traditional onion that makes a nice big bulb. These are different. These onions pretty much grow year-round, hence the term perennial. And because they grow year-round, you can pretty much harvest them anytime you want. So you can have green onion tops to use year-round. All of them have a little bit of the white part at the base there underneath the soil, which also gives you some nice onion flavor. You can use that part of the plant as well. And there are quite a few different types or varieties of perennial onions out there. Some do really well down here. Some I found don't do as well down here today. I'm going to show you two that have done really well for me. So first, let's talk about a variety we've been growing for I think 3, 4, maybe even 5 years now. These Louisiana Evergreen shallots. So this is technically a shallot, although we often call it a perennial onion because it behaves like a perennial onion. Now these have done something very odd this year. At this stage in the game, these should be dying back or completely dead. As you can see, they're not. So let me walk you through the life cycle or the growth cycle of these so we can better understand what's going on here. So you typically want to plant these either in the summer or the fall, just depending on when you get your hands on some of these bulbs here. So you would normally have a little bulb like that. It would be kind of dried out, looks like a white shallot, wouldn't have this green part attached to it. You'd have a nice little dried white shallot bulb there, and that's what you would plant in the ground. Yes, you can plant these in the dead middle of summer, even down here, and they'll do just fine. Or you can wait until the fall months and plant them then too. And so you plant these little bulbs in the ground much like you would a garlic bulb, and not long after planting you'll start seeing some green vegetation emerge from the soil. So you'll see just one green shoot in the beginning coming from that bulb you planted, but as these things grow, and it doesn't take long for this to happen, you'll notice they start to multiply, and depending on how well you feed them and water them, they can multiply quite a bit. So if you feed them well and water them well, you can get as many as 30 to 40 plants from that single bulb you planted. They can multiply that much. This here was all one big bunch planted from one bulb, and this is not even all of it. This is just what I'm holding right now. Another piece of this clump fell off as I was harvesting it. So these things just grow throughout the winter and continue to multiply. Now they won't have the bulbs on them as they're multiplying. They'll just look like a big bunch of spring onions. And from what I've heard and what I've seen, these things are pretty dang cold hardy. That 6 or 7 inches of snow we had this past winter really didn't bother them at all. May have singed the tops a little bit, but didn't really bother them. And I've heard of people, you know, as far north as Ohio, maybe even farther north, growing these in the winter with no issues. But when the year turns, then some different things can start happening with these. So when spring starts to roll around, these things will start producing flower heads. And what we usually do is just go in there and cut off those flower heads because they will continue to grow after they make the flower heads. That's another thing that makes these different from a traditional bulbing onion. They'll keep growing after you cut off that flower head. But after you cut off that flower head and they grow a little bit more, when it gets really hot, that's when they'll start to form bulbs. And usually after they form bulbs, these plants will die back to the ground completely. So they'll start getting a little brown and crispy, then they'll get really brown and crispy, and usually they'll die back completely. We try to harvest them when we can still see a little bit of the plant there. That way we know where to pull. And so once they die back, we pull up the plants. We've got our shallots, our bulbs here harvested. We'll put them underneath the barn, let them dry out for a little bit. We'll save some to use in the kitchen, and then we'll come back out to the garden anytime during the summer, really, anytime in July, August, September, October, November. Whenever we get ready, come out here and plant those bulbs. So replant some of those so we kind of keep them going. So that's the general kind of life cycle or growth cycle of these Louisiana evergreen shallots. But as I told you, this year they didn't really follow the rules. So while these things should be brown and crispy right now or died back to the ground, they're not. And it's not just me that has had this issue. I talked to another guy in Florida that said the same thing happened to him, and my friend in Louisiana who introduced me to these said the same thing happened with his. Now, what caused it? We really don't know. We can guess and say it was the crazy weather we had this winter that made these things act different, but who really knows? My buddy in Louisiana has been growing these for a long time, and he said he's never seen this happen where they didn't die back to the ground. Now, important to note here, these did look like they were going to do what they're supposed to do back in the late spring when we had a month and a half of dry weather. They looked like they were dying back to the ground as usual. But then we started getting rain almost every afternoon, and they just perked back up, never died back to the ground. They have bulbed, which is a good sign, just didn't see that die back. So what are we going to do with these, even though they're still growing? Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and harvest all these here later today. Now, I could leave them in the ground, and if you've got just a little small patch of these, you can leave yours in the ground too. But mine have multiplied a lot. Got a little bit of a jungle here. The weeds have gotten the best of me a little bit, so I need to take these out and replant them somewhere else and spread them out. We also want to have some of these available on our website because we get emails every day asking when they're going to be available again. So I'm going to harvest all I've got here. I'll probably cut the tops off of them, put them underneath the barn, let them dry out. That process is probably going to take at least 2 to 3 weeks, and then we'll be able to take inventory of what we got and get them listed on the website. So we appreciate your patience. We know a lot of people have been waiting on these, and we're going to get them listed as soon as we can. Just wanted to wait and kind of see why these were doing something different this year, you know, what they were doing different. So we should still have plenty available. They just didn't die back to the ground this year for whatever reason. Now let's transition over here to another perennial onion that we really like. A few similarities here to the evergreen shallot, but also quite a few differences. So this one here is called the white Welsh perennial onion. You'll also see it called the white Welsh bunching onion, but I don't like to call it a bunching onion because it's not really like a typical bunching onion seed you would buy online, because these do multiply. So I pulled up a bunch of these so we could compare to what I showed you earlier, and as you can see, these get much larger. These plants right here can easily get 2.5 foot tall. So with these, you got a lot more green top that you can use. You've also got thicker stalks on this white Welsh perennial onion right here. Again, not going to be as big as a bulbing onion because this is a perennial onion, but these stalks are a good bit thicker than what we see on that Louisiana evergreen shallot. Now, much like the Louisiana evergreen shallot, these do multiply. As you can see here, got a nice big multiplied bunch right there that was grown from planting just a single plant like that. Now, they won't multiply as much as Louisiana evergreen shallots will. You're probably not going to get a bunch of 40 from planting a single plant. The first year I grew these, I fed them okay and got on average, I don't know, probably 5 to 6 per bunch. This year we fed them a lot more and probably averaging about 12 to 15 per bunch. Still not going to get as many as we do with the evergreen shallots, but if you feed them well, you'll get a bigger bunch. So these don't multiply as much, but these are bigger and the stems are thicker, so per one you pluck off, you're getting a little more groceries there. Another big difference between these and the evergreen shallots is you can propagate these by seeds. So these will flower out in the spring, usually the late spring, much like the Louisiana evergreen shallots do, but these actually have viable seeds on top of them. You can harvest those seeds, or you can just let these things volunteer all over the place. I had little onion seedlings all around the 2 raised beds where I have these growing. Those seeds volunteer like crazy. So whereas the evergreen shallots are propagated by planting those little bulbs, those shallot bulbs, these are propagated 2 different ways. You can propagate them via seeds or simply by dividing out these plants here, plucking one off like we did here, and sticking that baby in the ground. You put this in the ground, you know, in 6 or 7 months or so, you're going to end up with this again. Another difference with these and the Louisiana evergreen shallots, while those evergreen shallots seem to be pretty dang cold hardy, these are even more cold hardy. So during all that snow we had this past winter, like I said, burned the tips a little bit on my shallot plants, but these right here weren't phased at all. So maybe these are a little bit more cold hardy. They both love the heat and grow fine during the summer. As you can see, as hot as it's been out here, heat index over 100 almost every day, still kicking, looking fine. And then one more difference, unlike the Louisiana evergreen shallots, which are supposed to die back every year, these never die back. They just keep going and going. Now they will look a little pitiful after they produce that seed head, but once they've dropped that seed head or you've cut it off, they'll rebound, and it doesn't take them long to green up again. So these are a little different than those Louisiana evergreen shallots that you've seen us grow for the last 3 or 4 years, but the concept is still the same. Once you plant these, you pretty much have them forever because they're just going to multiply and multiply, and you can pluck them apart, harvest all you want, just leave 1 or 2 stalks there, and they'll continue to multiply and grow for you. Now, important to note, if you have these planted in a small container or a small skinny raised bed like I showed you earlier where we have these growing now, after say 1.5 to 2 years, you may have to thin them out a little bit if you're not actively harvesting them a lot. So that raised bed I showed you earlier starting to get a little overcrowded, so I'm going to have to pull these up, split them apart, move them around, spread them out, maybe put them in one of these in-ground plots. So that's a maintenance thing that you might have to do every couple years just to keep them from getting so overcrowded there. Besides that, you really don't have to do a whole lot to them. You can not feed them at all, or you can feed them a lot and see how much you can get them to multiply. So because this white Welsh perennial onion here can be propagated via seeds, we do now have the seeds for these on our website. We got packets of 50 seeds, which is a gracious plenty. Doesn't take many of these to get started, and before you know it, you'll have tons and tons of them. And then as far as the Louisiana evergreen shallots go, like I said, be patient with us. Give us another few weeks, and we should have a good idea of what we've got and be able to get that listed online as well. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. If you want to know more about these Louisiana evergreen shallots and how you can divide them and replant them as they grow, watch this video right here. When we did that a few years ago, we'll show you just how easy it is. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.